Hello everyone. If you just want the build planner for the build that you're about to see and don't want to have to hear me talk, it's down in the description, there's the link in there. Check it out. Thank you so much for stopping by. Subscribe to the channel, I'll have more Last Epoch stuff and other ARPG content on my channel. I'll catch you later. Hello everyone and welcome back. My name is Send, and in this video I'm going to be going over my early build guide for the Falconer in Last Epoch. Last Epoch 1.0 release was, as of recording of this, just over 1 day ago, and I am currently working on 2 different builds, both for the Falconer and for the Warlock. Unfortunately, the Warlock was created first in online mode, which isn't available at the moment. It is at around level 60 as well, but I don't have access to it right now as the online API is down, so that will have to come out a little bit later. That said, for the Falconer here, I have to say that I quite enjoyed it a bit more than I was expecting. It has been an absolute blast, both in terms of enjoyment and in terms of speed going through the campaign. It's very high up there in terms of my fastest clear of the campaign in the game. The moment you unlock the aerial assault ability, which is the movement skill on the Falconer tree, you absolutely fly through every single map, just jumping from pack to pack, and you barely need to cast anything yourself because the Falconer does all of the work, and you just run through and pick up whatever loot you find that is useful for you. It is also decently sturdy, especially if you invest on health on your gear and upgrade your resistances and armor and bases as you go along. This was initially an hardcore character. Unfortunately, it has died now from me being AFK in the middle of a map, trying to read and theorycraft the abilities, and I got sniped by one of those flaming scorpions in Act 9. Other than that, it has had no deaths so far. Also, I have killed the first Shade of Orbos with this character, and I'll leave that at the end of the video for those that would like to see that. I will leave a warning at the end of the details of the character for those that want to avoid spoilers. But without further ado, let's get into the character details. So, going over the character details here, as you can see, we're level 62 at the moment. We have just over 1k health, and we have 20 vitality and 39 dexterity. We have almost every single res capped except fire, which is decently high. And we have about 16% armor and 13% dodge. On our pieces of gear, on our helmet we have vitality with a dive bomb mod here. If you don't have that, you can easily just have something like dexterity or any other offensive mod that you could find and put here. We are using this base, however, that is a Falconer specific base that you can get that will buff your Falcon's melee, which I'm pretty convinced would be better. As for the suffixes here, just put whatever resistances or defensives you need. If you are good on resistances, you can always, on the suffixes, just do hybrid health, percentage health, or flat health. On your amulet, there's 2 bases that I would consider using here. One is the bone amulet for the added resistances. The other one is the turquoise amulet, I believe, that gives you minion damage. All minion damage applies to our falcon, so that would be very good as well. Prefixes here are very weak. In my opinion, what you could get here instead would be something like minion damage or physical damage. And on the suffixes, you could have something like health, like in here, and whatever resistance you're missing. On our chest piece here, the base is pretty good, gives you a bunch of resistances. There is a Falconer as well base here that you could have, but if you need the resistances, I would argue this is a bit better. On the prefixes here, I don't have anything good, unfortunately. And then we have health and physical resistance. For the prefixes here, you could potentially get both dexterity and vitality, both for offense and defense. Would be far more beneficial for us than whatever we got here. On our bow, this base is pretty good. As far as I understand, the flat to bow damage doesn't really benefit our Falcon, unless I'm missing something. However, the bow crit strike chance and bow critical strike multiplier, I believe does. So that is pretty good, and it does because of a node in the Falconer skill line, which I'll talk about in a second. But that's why I'm using this base. On the bow itself, on the mods, we have a tier 5 increased bow damage, which is also being applied to our Falcon. The lightning damage is doing nothing for us. Instead here, we'd much rather have something like crit strike chance or multiplier. And then on the suffixes, we have chance to ignite. Here, something like chance to slow or chance to bleed would be the best. And then the minion melee damage is very, very, very good for us. On our quiver, I have again both the critical strike multiplier quiver, or potentially could use the defensive quiver with a bunch of resistance, this one, as the implicit. It's an option as well. And on this quiver in particular, I don't have anything good. I'm looking to swap this away, but something like potentially bow damage or minion damage would be very good here. And then the bleed is fine for an offensive stat, but you can get double resistance on the suffixes should you need. On our belt here, I am currently using the Spider Silk Sash. Doesn't need to be experimental, but there's not another prefix that we actually care about, other than minion damage, that is, which we already have on this. So that's also quite a good experimental mode, so I stuck with it. And then on the suffixes again, health and resistance are just the bread and butter. On the rings, I have two very good bases here. Both the coral ring and the gold ring are very good defensively. This one, the poison damage doesn't do anything. Good things we could get here: physical damage, minion damage would be the best thing. Crit strike chance is pretty good. And then lightning resistance and health regeneration is not very important. We're not investing on that, so that doesn't have a lot of value. We could get something like another resistance or percentage health. I think you can roll percentage health on rings. I'm pretty sure. Maybe not. Maybe it's... No, yeah, you can. Absolutely you can. And the other ring, same thing. Same values for both rings. On the gloves, this base is pretty weak. You can get very good bases with implicit resistances, with implicit crit strike. So don't go for this base, go for something much better. But things that you can get here, Dex is very good. Our Falcon scales a lot with Dex, so Dex is very valuable for us. And then you can get things like minion damage on gloves as well. And then the usual suffixes of health, resistances. At some point, you would really benefit from having crit strike avoidance somewhere. You get a lot from our passive drill, which I'll talk about in a little bit. And our damage also increases from having it overcapped, so getting crit avoidance would be very, very good. On our boots here, as you can see, we have a pair of Eborian boots. This one with a tier 6 for lightning resistance, and then on the prefixes I have vitality and intelligence. Intelligence is doing nothing for us here, but I tried to Glyph of Chaos that into something valuable, and that's what I got, unfortunately. So it is what it is. We get a lot of resistance from a single pair of boots here, so this is very good. And finally, here on our relic, we have a bit of cold resistance, doesn't do much. +1 aerial assault, and I think this is tier 2. Yeah, tier 2. So very, very, very good stat there. And then elemental resistance and a bit of health. So as you can see, there's still a lot of space to improve pieces here. There's a lot of things that only have either 3 stats or just not useful stats like this quiver. So very, very, very big space to improve, and obviously we're starting to drop some exalted pieces, so that will be very good for us as well. On the idols here, we have got very weak idols, but it's the ones we found so far, so bear with me. Things like chance to apply crit vulnerability with call drops is actually very good. We are dropping a bunch of them everywhere it goes, so this is quite nice. We then have crit strike multiplier for us and for our minion. Bleed chance, or our bleed chance, part of it gets applied to our Falcon, which is quite nice, and then dodge when we've been hit recently. And finally in here we don't care about the poison on hit, but the armor shred effect is nice. So yeah, this is not optimized whatsoever, but there's some good stats in here that we can use. For our passives here, let's start at the base of the rogue. We have 8 points into steady hands for the dex and health. Here, Swift Assassin, just the attack speed and fizz. We don't attack a lot, but it's beneficial when we actually do. You could potentially drop this and just go all out on here. It's something that I might try at some point actually, to see if it makes a difference, a noticeable difference in our damage, but it should be fine. And then I have Sapping Strikes, 2 points here, and a single point in evasion. Sapping Strikes here was because I'm currently using Puncture as a safety net, just in case somehow I manage to mess up my rotation and completely run out of mana, which, to be fair, hasn't happened at all. But there's not a lot more things that I could get. You could potentially drop these and go instead into agility, but it's not a big difference. On the Falconer tree here, I started by going into 5 points here, so the Falcon has additional base crit strike chance, and all of the minion damage points are very good. I then put 5 points into this. Just dexterity is very good because of our passive bonus from being a Falconer, and the Falcon gains some throwing damage per 4 dex. I then put points into Crimson Skies here for a bit of Crimson Shroud generation. After that I put 5 points in a Ranger's Mark to get the chance to buff our Falcon with added melee damage when we use a bow skill, but actually at this point we're not using that a lot, so I might swap this for points in here for the dodge and the health, but I'll have to see. Then I put 5 points into Raptor Wings just to get the haste, and this procs very, very quickly with how many hits our Falcon is doing. And from these points you'll get access to these lines. All of these in the middle are either situational or not super powerful. Melee damage for Falcon is actually pretty good. I didn't read that at all actually. In fact, these points here are probably much better going all in here, so scrap that. These points, as the moment I finish the video, are gonna go from here to here, because this only gives your Falcon 1 per buff, like 1 melee flat per buff. Each point in here gives it 3 melee damage, so actually there's no reason to use this at all. I'd much rather use this, and the increased damage with bows, while good, it doesn't compare to what this would give us, so my bad. But continuing on the remaining points, after that I put points into evasion tactics. This gives us dex, armor and dodge, just a good point, and a single point into coordinated fade. This is giving us Silver Shrouds, which is very good. This gives us a bit of an extra defensive when we dodge, and it procs very often. And it procs when we use, in this case, because I only have 1 point in this, we use our first ability. I believe that's how that works. If we had 2 points, you'd proc when we use, in this case, net. if you have 3 points when I use dive bomb. I'm pretty convinced that's how that works. Disregarding that, you'd want Silver Shroud on whatever ability you feel more comfortable with putting it on. At the moment I have on Falcon Strikes, you can put that on whatever ability. Doesn't really matter. Relentless Talons is very good. We regain a health per point of dex when our Falcon hits an enemy, which is all the goddamn time. This is an amazing point, go all out on this. After that, Needles-like Precision is very good, increase our crit and the crit of our pet, as well as the multiplier. After that, I put points into Sky Assassin. Increased damage over time is not amazing, but we do bleed a lot, and with the 5 points here, a lot of our bleed goes into the Falcon. So we actually end up putting up to 100 stacks of bleed on enemies at times. So that scales up very quickly, very, very nicely. The base of this node, however, is not very good, so I only put 5 points to get that bleed conversion for our Falcon. After that, I put 6 points into Tailwind. These effects are always doubled if our Falcon has hit an enemy recently, which is all the goddamn time. You can see that on the gameplay. Our Falcon is always doing damage, so these are always 12% movement speed, 12% increased dodge, and 12% damage taken while moving, the reduction. And yeah, that's pretty much the passive tree as of right now. I will eventually, next I'm going to cap this, because I really want the crit avoidance, and here is where a minion, in this case the Falcon, gains crit strike multiplier per 3% of our uncapped crit strike avoidance. This is why we still gain a lot of value from getting overcapped avoidance. For our skills, here first I have Puncture, and for leveling reference, I started leveling with Flurry until I unlocked Puncture, and then this is very much the order which I unlocked all of these skills. First I went into Puncture, 2 points into Perforate, 3 points into Bloodthirst, 3 points into Hunger, 2 points in Press the Attack, 2 points in Splinter, 1 point into Cross Forward. Oh, actually I lost points because I had Puncture levels. Oops. Ideally you'd have 5 points into Shatter here, and then finish by putting the remaining points back into Splinter. So that's how we go for Puncture. But Puncture, of all of these, is the least important of your abilities. Here, for the Falconer, or for the Falcon tree, yeah, sure. For the Falcon ability, I put 1 point in Falconer's Journey, which makes it scale very well, 1 point into Side by Side, and 1 point into Train to Hunt. This will make so the highest of your increased melee damage, increased throwing damage, or increased bow damage also applies at a 75% rate to your Falcon. This is why increased bow damage is very good on our bow, because it still applies to our Falcon. And I want a bow because there's a very specific bow that I'll put on screen that I want to make for this, or that I want to find for this build, that I think will be incredibly valuable. I would love to try it, but it looks absolutely amazing for this build. After this, I went and put 1 point into Falconer's Mark, 2 points into Avian's Stamina, 1 point into Hunter Spoils, 1 point into Birds of Prey, 2 points into the Blood Dance, and then 1 point in Go for the Eyes for the crit conversion, and 1 point in Exposed Weakness for the crit multiplier conversion. The last 2 points, in my opinion, will go either into Avian Stamina or potentially into Agile Prey. Up to you. After that, I slotted Net in, which is what's giving us most of our Caltrop generation. Firstly, as I said, point into Trickster Artist for the Caltrop drops. After that, 2 points into Zone of Control, and 1 point into Tinkerer's combo. After that, 2 points in rendering wires, 1 point into barbed net, for it to start dealing quite a bit of damage actually. We start stacking bleed stacks very quickly with this. After that, I put 1 point into bolt throw because I didn't like the flip back. If you like that, you can leave this and put this somewhere else for more damage. That's entirely up to you. After that, 1 point into HL Hunter, which is an absolute dead point, but I wanted to get the smoke bomb drop whenever I use the net. It is not necessary, and smoke bomb has a decently long cooldown of 10 seconds, right? But it does grant you haste while you're inside, which can be convenient at times, and blinds enemies, of course. So I could potentially just drop these and go into something like slow stacks on enemies, which is also quite good. Nevertheless, after that, I went to advanced engineering, surprise snare, 3 points into weakening threads, and finally 4 points eventually into exposed bait. For the final point, like I said, because one will go into this, the final point can go into something like rendering wires. On aerial assault, our movement skill. Here, firstly, I went into skyward swoop. This is crucial and an amazing note. A portion of the cooldown of this skill is recovered when our falcon hits an enemy, which is very, very, very often. This has naturally a 3.8 second cooldown, but more often than not it comes down to maybe a second cooldown at most, so it's very, very valuable. After that, treacherous pursuit for caltrops, rendering barbs, and spike field. After that, 2 points into avian hunter, 1 point into featherstorm, 2 points into domain of the huntress, and 1 point into shaded wingspan. This just makes so our falcon can do other abilities while still having a featherstorm happening on a rares and uniques, which is quite good. After that, I put 2 points into healing gusts, 2 points into aerial prowess, and 1 point into torrent of talents. Finally, I have 1 point into Falcon's Havoc, and eventually I'll get my final point into this as well. Last skill that I have specialized here is Dive Bomb. Dive Bomb is kind of like, functions like a nuke in this ability really. I have already got hits of like 15-16k DPS or damage hits with this, and let's go over the tree. So my first point was hindering beak strike, then I put 2 points into flesh tearing talons, 1 point into red wings for crimson shroud, and 1 point in exsanguinating strike. This makes so whenever dive bomb hits, it causes all bleed stacks that are on the enemy to be consumed and deal the remaining damage instantly, making it a massive damage increase. After that, I put 1 point into expose their defenses, 1 point into talon blades, 1 point into gale of blades. After, I put 1 point into featherfall, and then 4 points into rushing winds to make so the delay is a lot more reduced. At this point, with 4 points here, the delay is basically non-existent. After that, I put 2 more points into expose their defenses, and finally, I'm probably going to put 1 or 2 points into 2 shreds, or just go all in on featherfall. Haven't decided yet. And yeah guys, that's pretty much the build as it is right now. Once again, these are my stats. If you want to see anything fancy about it, feel free. Currently, I have, where am I? There you go. Unlocked 3 of the Circle of Fortune things, working on unlocking more. This is an awesome system. I am absolutely in love with this. This is so fun. But yes, this is very much my character. Expect an update on this fairly soon, as well as more videos coming for last epoch. I'm having a blast with the game right now, even though I need to play offline, and even though the online API has been struggling, the devs have been absolutely awesome in their transparency and working hard into making everything back to normal for us, so I appreciate that a lot. After this, I'm gonna leave you with my Shade of Orobo skill. Hope you enjoy. Subscribe to the channel for more content. Expect the Warlock build fairly soon. Hopefully the servers will handle themselves better in the next couple of days, and I'll be able to bring that out for you guys. So thank you so much for watching. I'll catch you guys later. Bye bye.
An eternity of pain.